Welcome to this edition of the Gaming Tailgate Podcast. I am CDJ, joined by Tommy and JBHuskers. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing?
Good, now that we have this 25th hour patch that just got applied tonight.
Be interesting to see if this does truly allow us to get some of our dynasties off the ground and improve the game, and hopefully it does.
And I said gentlemen. I don't know why you answered there, JB, but I'm glad you're doing well.
Yeah.
Before we get into the big update news, let's kind of get the minor news out of the way first. Since the last show, we found out over 5 million people played the game in the first week. If you count that early access, they're saying another 500,000. Before we knew it was a couple million in pre-release, and now we're at 5.5 million. So as we joked last show, if you like the way they did the marketing, communications, and everything, every approach to the game, you're getting it next year too. If things went way too well, they will not change that.
They'll get burned by that if they stick to the same exact methodology. I mean, again, we know why a lot of people bought the game, nostalgia, but then as well, like you said, touched on last time, it's, there were crowds of people that waited every 3 to 5 years to buy a new copy of the game. Now you had everybody buying that new copy of the game because it had been more than 5 years. So again, next year, I would say cut it in half and still be hopeful kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, on top of that, they didn't even do any television advertising. So, I mean, there might have been a whole lot of used-to-be gamers that didn't even realize it's out and may still not realize it's out because they're not following the news or anything like that. They're just watching sports on television and may not have been drawn back in. But maybe if they would have thrown some stuff on ESPN, maybe it would have brought a few more people in. So it's kind of interesting that they didn't do that. So maybe it's going to be interesting to see if they do that next year.
Well, in this day and age, do they really even advertise Madden on TV at all? I mean, I may be wrong, but I don't recall seeing it very recently. Do they?
I think they do more online, but I thought they did. I wonder if with college football, if they'll do a big ad campaign when the season actually starts during the game.
Yeah,
so
it'd be interesting
to see as well.
Several updates out of the way, so the game is up and running. Hopefully the big issues are all eradicated or at least somewhat addressed, so those new people who come in won't feel like they bought a half game or a bugged game. It'll be smooth sailing, hopefully, at that point.
Yeah, and as well, you can market right alongside the real life games and say, hey, we've got these players in our game too, so come play it.
Players and uniforms and all this stuff they keep adding. The big update 1.007, kind of the first big update they've had that they really came out and addressed every detail that was in the update. Some had small updates we maybe found out on Twitter through the CFB Direct account. This was the one where they had I believe 110 plus bullet points. I believe somebody said they went and counted every one of them. So quite a bit in this update. It did come with a few bugs that, like JB said, I think a couple people held off on starting their online dynasties. Let's mention those real quick, that it seems like some of those have already been addressed. People had found that there were some dynasty issues once that update 1.007 came out. On Friday, the CFB Direct account said that they had some updates, server maintenance completed to address the issues above for online dynasties. Those issues, talking about when using these schemes and playbooks to change your coach, it would affect your player archetypes and overalls. Incoming freshmen were not appearing in the position changes screen during the offseason, and annual non-conference games not rotating. So we found out with that, for online dynasties, it sounds like you're good to go. So I think we're at a point where I feel relatively confident saying if you want to have an online dynasty is a good point to start, unless, and EA has said this several times themselves, there's going to be a bigger roster update coming towards the start of the season. So if you really want up-to-date rosters or more updated rosters, maybe you still wait a few more weeks. But for guys like us who are kind of chomping at the bit to compete against each other, you could probably go ahead and start your online dynasty. But it does say, and it's worth noting, offline dynasties, they're going to have to do a title update for those issues. So if you just play offline dynasty and not in the cloud at all, you may want to still wait with those issues.
Yeah, and I know I'm sure we'll talk about the next title update coming after this one, but I would expect that they'll do kind of a hot fix update before that one just to fix these, few issues, because obviously it was something they could easily fix. They found the issue within 24 hours. So, I would think that they could do that in a title update relatively soon.
Before we get into the 1.07 full details, I do want, like you said, we kind of know when the next one's halfway coming, thanks to Tyler Jones. He's the deputy athletic director for the University of Virginia. Some fans were asking him, saying the first title update came out on Thursday, and the Virginia stuff, some of the stuff they were talking about before, not in the game. He says he chatted with EA on that Thursday, and they assured us that students, fans on the Hill will be added to title update number 3. Title Update 3 is scheduled 45 days after the original launch of the game, so August 29th. We're hopeful the scoreboard update will be included in the Title Update 5 patch, which is roughly 90 days after the original launch. Doing the math on that, that's about mid-October. So obviously there must be an update 4 in there somewhere of these bigger updates. So it's like we already have kind of a roadmap. Thanks to Tyler Jones of Virginia. No thanks to EA on that. Thank you to Tyler who spilled. I'm sure EA probably will slap his wrist and say, please don't leak those details again. But I appreciate it. And I'm a big Virginia fan this week as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we never get to hear about in the past, that they actually have a roadmap that, when some certain things will be released. So, I mean, it's good to kind of get a little bit behind the scenes. Now, I know why EA would not announce that, because if you say, August 29th and it hits September 1st, then people are going to complain for 3 days. So,
or something pushes it just completely as well.
Exactly. Yeah,
or
exactly.
or 3 breaks something in 2, and then 4's got to fix something else that was in the what's in 4 and 5 may be different if something gets broken in between now and then too. So things could change between now and October on what's going to get pushed out.
All right, so update 1.007, which according to, but apparently is what they're actually calling title update number 2.
I would guess this is number 2 because the first one was probably released right around launch.
Yeah.
And so this is, the second one. And so the next one will be in about 3 weeks.
Yeah, because like that guy said, TU3 was August 29th. So
I said people online saying that there's about 110 bullet points. So we're going to go through every single one of those in great detail. Okay, we're not. We're just going to skim over this. And guys, if there's anything you want to talk about as I scroll through it, don't be afraid to speak up, and I'll point out anything I've noticed on these. On gameplay,
we're not doing a full hour on each bullet point.
That's for subscribers only.
Oh, okay.
So
only fans.
8 new shotgun formations. I can't say that I've checked all these out, but I do want to mention I did try out that bunch quads open, known as diamond quads, out of the Texas Tech playbook, and I do like that one a lot. There's I think they call it a screen pass to the running back. In practice mode against Oklahoma, I had fun running it. Now, in a game, that probably means it will not work. But at least in practice mode, I did like it. The big one probably on the gameplay, one of the big ones, I guess I should say, tuning and logic enhancement to pursuit angles. I played a couple games since this update came out. Probably not enough to make a definitive opinion. I feel like it's better. Did you guys get that perception in the games you've played? And I know you're like me. We never get to play as much as we want. But at least in the games you did play, did it seem better?
Yes and no. I think what they're saying is it further differentiates players with high pursuit versus low pursuit. So playing with some lower ranked teams, I saw some awful pursuit angles in theory because they have poor pursuit grades. Now, I thought it was probably worse than it should be in general, but at the same time, I was playing with lower schools, so that in theory, that's what explains it. So hopefully in general it's better, but at the same time, I definitely need to spend some more time with the game to say for sure.
Yeah, I haven't really had a chance to play as much since the patch drop, but I'm kind of curious to see if this is now going to fix that money play in practice with the option. If when the running back is going straight to the left, I wonder if that's no longer going to be 100% a win.
And it's worth mentioning, after you said that, JB, last show I went and played Road to Glory, and it definitely is like, I thought maybe you were embellishing. It's like 95+% effective on scoring touchdowns, and it might be pushing 97 to 98% on that.
And we'll get to it a little bit, but I played FCS for the first time, hence my background where I was player of the week for the Big Ten Conference. Yeah, that injury bug, holy crap, that thing was insane. How many times a player got injured on there?
Reduced frequency of broken tackles from trailing defenders. I think that seemed better, but again, like I said, I played a handful of games. I don't think that's enough to really make an opinion on that. Did you guys have any thoughts on that one? Which I thought was kind of a big one.
Yeah, I still think there's some broken tackles, which there should be, but at the same time, it's better. They can at least still drag them down from time to time. So before we go too much further, though, I do want to jump back to the playbooks real quick. Obviously, they mention all the new formations, but I want to say they also added new plays to some of the formations. For some of the existing formations, I could be wrong about that, but it seems like there was some stuff added there that I don't remember seeing before. The other nice thing is in your custom playbooks, the formations are now listed alphabetically. So if you're trying to find a certain formation, you can actually scroll through alphabetically. So it's a lot easier. Because of that, I was able to find there's 2 shotgun slot right formations. One's actually should be slot right wide, but they're both labeled the same thing. So it's a little confusing there, but you can at least now find all the formations.
I always like how EA they put more stuff in the game than they put in the patch notes. I understand they can't get to everything, but then there's some things in here, and I'll point out when I get to it. I feel like we're actually in a previous update. They just didn't put out details. They put it in this update. I know historically they've done that before, but I just think that's interesting how they don't always publicize everything quite accurately. For example, fix the issue where you cannot use 425 or 335 formations in a custom playbook. I was told by a community member that a couple updates ago that was fixed, and I can't say I went in firsthand and looked. Did I misunderstand the community member, or?
I need to go back and try again, but what I was seeing before was that if you just had 335 and didn't have any 425, the 335 would never show up. But if you added one formation of 425, then the 335 would automatically show up. So again, it was kind of strange that way. I haven't tested it after the patch. I've tweaked some of my existing playbooks, but not created a new one. So I need to kind of play around with that. So I was hoping that was going to fix the big nickel issue, because in 425, it actually, if you do a custom, then it replaces it from 425 to big nickel, but that's just a minor annoyance.
I think it was Quizzy who told me it was either 1.005 or 006. I thought he said he fixed it, but maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it's a different issue than this one. Abilities. This is a big one. We're a bunch of amateur, armchair quarterbacks, from the peanut gallery, and we even noticed just looking at screenshots early on in the game that the coloring of the abilities were going to be very difficult to make out on the screens. Well, lo and behold, we get to update 1.007. They updated the coloring of the platinum tier abilities to further distinct the look versus silver abilities. That was one of those, I'm glad they did it, but it's one of those, we knew that from about 2 seconds looking at the first screen that was not going to fly. Have you guys noticed that it's in the menus, it's improved? You can, the platinum looks more purplish, but at least now you can tell there's a difference. Whereas before the update went out, when you go through even just on the rosters, they're trying to give you the players' abilities and tiers. You cannot make out the color on the side at all. I thought they had two different icons in terms of different backgrounds. That it was a bug with the image, not realizing, no, they're trying to give me the color and show a tier, but you couldn't tell it.
Yeah, and I definitely, that's a big improvement. I mean, obviously purple and silver, it's a lot easier to tell the two, but even the gold and bronze, I think they made some tweaks there, if I had to guess, because the color seems a little bit different. The gold shines a little bit better than it did before.
They rebalanced the gold and platinum tiers of the juke and spin abilities like 360 and sidestep. Basically, the Quinshaw and Judkins patch is, that's what you would just call that one. Yeah. I've seen people go in and test that. I haven't gone through firsthand, and I don't play a lot online, so I never got to experience that firsthand, which I probably should count my blessings on that one. But
there's a funny
that helps a lot.
I don't know if you guys saw it, but there was a funny clip of a guy that was celebrating it so much he literally fell out of his chair and said he was going to call his pastor and thank him to thank Jesus for it or whatever.
I did see that.
Yeah, it was a little over. It was obviously clearly over the top, but still pretty.
It was still
pretty
funny.
Good.
A little.
Yep.
This is one, I be honest, first time I read the patch notes, I didn't see this. I'm only going to mention it because I think the second line of this is pretty funny. Slightly rebalanced the effectiveness of the gold and platinum tiers of the quick jump ability. Additionally, we made adjustments to the tier levels found on the Texas Front 7. So apparently the Texas Front 7 must have been overpowered, so they had to bring back the tiers on some of the players. That's how I read that.
Yeah, no, that's how I would read it as well.
That's funny. Dynasty, this was a big one. There was an issue where players were unable to have more than 20 created coaches at one time in an online Dynasty. That has been fixed. That was one of those big ones that kind of were holding back Dynasties, and thank goodness that's been fixed. Dynasty, it seems like a lot of little things, but they add up. The fixes around score summaries and box scores, fixes for news stories, a new playoff bracket screen. And this is from community member Jay Clyde. He put out a thread yesterday on Twitter, a lot of the new things in the game. And here's a look at that new playoff bracket. I think I like it better than the old one. It's definitely more clear on the automatic qualifiers. They have the white border and they still left the asterisk, which we kind of had to guess on several shows ago what that meant. And I think, Tommy, you figure out that that was the automatic qualifiers. Overall, do you guys like this look better? I do like the backdrop a lot better. It looks very ESPN-ish, even though they don't have the ESPN license. It looks very much ESPN.
Yeah, it's better in the sense of being able to capture it all in one screenshot. Whereas before, I'm trying to remember, did you have to scroll over to see the other half or something like that?
I don't remember. I just only saw screenshots. I haven't got that far enough into Dynasty or Road to Glory to see it, but it was where the brackets came in from each side. So I mean, there's some elements where that was a little cleaner, but I think this is clearer, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think so as well. I like this one better.
Yeah, it looks nice, and now the Ohio State people can quit complaining that they're getting the shaft on everything here because they won the title here. So.
And they'd be Michigan to do it.
Yeah.
The jinx and the bashing of Ohio State is finally over. Thank goodness.
I wonder. It's interesting how two first-round teams were able to get into the final there.
That's that sim logic for you.
Yeah.
They got a little jokey with this, but I think it's worth mentioning. They discovered that the FC schools were secretly using professional players and passing them off as collegiate players. It gave them sanctions and ensured they are now using properly rated players. I read that as they didn't realize that when they put them in, they made them way too good for it because they were way too competitive against people. The key part in this, make sure you have to make a new dynasty for that to take effect. Otherwise, if you already have a dynasty going, those FCF schools players are going to be way overrated.
Was that only in Dynasty then? Because like Road to Glory, I didn't have a trouble with FCFs at all. But of course, there was that injury bug, so that kind of helped kind of derail them a little bit too. So
I think it certainly kind of depended upon the team you were playing, because I was actually playing, what was it, FCS West or something like that. I can't remember. It was one school, but playing as Penn State, I beat them literally 90-6. I wasn't trying to run up the score, but it just literally, this was before the patch.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, they could do nothing right. I could do no wrong. So,
yeah,
again, I think it depended upon the school, but at the same time, yeah, definitely this, I'm glad this is fixed so that you don't have to worry about it. Now, obviously, hopefully you can restart your dynasty for it to take the new changes.
Yeah, I mean, I played East, so I guess that makes sense because they weren't on here. So the East wasn't cheating like these other three schools.
Yeah.
It is interesting that only 3 of them had this issue, not all of them. It's like they started making the rosters on a Friday. When they came back on Monday, they didn't go back and finish these last 3 schools when they were tweaking the ratings. And JB, you mentioned this fixing the issue where the wear and tear did not recover for FCS teams, resulting in a high number of injuries. I noticed that during a Road to Glory game too. It was like every play, once you got a handful of plays into the game, somebody was getting hurt.
That was annoying. Just popped up all the time.
Retune the toughest places to play formula.
Oh yeah, I shared this with you guys, but I came across toughest places to play in the I think it was when I was playing Oregon with my Road to Glory, and their rank for the toughest place to play was 0.
I mean, it's insanely tough.
You can't get any better than that.
I guess can't go lower
unless you can get negative.
That's true.
Another interesting, updated the coach talents on a Wyoming offensive coordinator. I really want to delete the update, all the game data, and go back and see what
it's very specific.
Was he like overpowered? Like did he have like every rank possible? I mean, was he?
I say if you have a saved dynasty, go out and look at him. Like we still have that starter dynasty that in the first week. So yeah, maybe we could go and check that out.
All of a sudden, all the offensive categories are maxed out.
It kind of makes me think that defensive games and playbooks updated for a bunch of schools. Again, you need to restart it or create a new dynasty for that to take effect, just like with the Wyoming offensive coordinator issue.
Up a little bit, it mentions the players that are 90 overall or lower reduce the chance to transfer. I'm not sure if that's a good thing. I mean, if just because they're below 90 doesn't mean they don't want to go play somewhere else,
Yeah.
That's we don't know what that means, though. What percentage does that mean? They reduced it from 80% to 75 or reduced it from 60 to 20?
Agreed. Yeah, no, we don't know the exact extent of that. But to me, I'm not seeing enough kind of backup players transferring when they should know that they're never going to get to that starter position. I'm not saying every player should, but I'm saying more should, from my opinion.
Yeah, especially like with using the playing time kind of rating, or what their grade is on playing time, and then how many minutes do they get on the field. You could easily calculate those and make that guy a transfer portal guy. But I did see some high, like when I did the sim with Ohio State, like my top free safety was a 95 overall, and all year he was high chance to transfer. But then I talked him off the ledge and with one thing, and he came right back. So I thought that was interesting that he was like, almost seemed like all throughout the year I got to go recruit a free safety to replace this guy, and yet my first chance at talking to him, I was able to bring him back in. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, the ones that are the deal breakers that are very dynamic, like playing style, playing time, and there may have been another one or two. Those are very difficult to work around. So, I mean, for example, in your case, it may have been playing style.
Yeah.
If the defense didn't have enough interceptions, then he wants to go play somewhere else where he can get more interceptions or something like that. So, I mean, to me, if you're starting on a national championship competing team, they shouldn't want to transfer at all.
Yeah, because I was and maybe the fact, because I simmed all the games and I ended up like 9-4. I made the playoffs and I made it to the championship game and lost in the championship game. And so maybe the fact that we were able to get to the championship game kind of made it easier to bring him back in. I don't know. But yeah, you're right. I mean, he was 95 overall at Ohio State, though they were 9-4. They weren't ever really at the top of the poll of the year, but yet was still able to get all the way to the end.
Recruiting. This was on whereas we talked about this on a previous show, just going through like a dummy dynasty to learn recruiting. Some of these issues were prevalent. One of them they talk about fixed an issue where teams were pursuing too many quarterbacks in high school recruiting, reduced the number of unrecruited 4 and 5 stars early in the season. I noticed that even midway through the year, there's a lot of 4 and 5 stars, that, especially the 4 stars that seemed like that were unrecruited, and increased the number of players that the AI will pursue at one time. Some of their EA's notes here, the dev note on recruiting, I thought was interesting. Our primary goals for this update were to remove most of the recruiting strategies that were discovered during early access and to smooth out the pain points our players were reporting. Removing most of the recruiting strategies, I think that they're missing a word or need a word of clarification, because it sounds like they're saying everything you used, we don't want you to do that.
All the cheese.
Exactly.
I think that's the word. I think that's what they want to use. Some word like that. There's something missing in there, because when you just read, you're like, yeah, it's almost like this thing. Yeah, the way you guys were doing it is the way we want you to do it.
This is the nice way to say it, and what they really meant to say was your stinky cheese is no longer going to be accepted here.
But some of that cheese and exploitation was because of the way the issues that popped up from EA's onto here. Exactly. When players weren't being recruited, that's not a me problem. That was an EA problem.
You forced
I think that's what they're saying. They fixed their problem so that you can't, abuse it, kind of thing.
There's the way it's worded. The first time I read it, I'm like, they're like, the way you guys are doing it, we're not doing that anymore.
That last bullet point under recruiting there is interesting. The increased number of players that the AI will pursue at one time. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but my strategy is to fill my board and then kind of pursue the top 10, 12, depending upon, what level my school is, go after the most important ones. So, I mean, I'm curious how the computer's going to do it. My worry there is that they spread their points too thin, whereas I'm giving a guy 80 points and they give him 30 because they're trying to recruit too many players or something.
Now, back in the day, if you had them on your board, it kind of gave it a little boost. Have you noticed that at all? Like,
definitely, if you give them a scholarship, it gives them a boost right away. And then if you keep them on there, I think you still continue to get boost, assuming nobody else is heavily recruiting them.
Yeah, I mean, I like to fill the board too, just because there's going to be, especially like with our online dynasty that we're doing, we're a 2-star school, so it's going to be kind of tough to get some of those good players. And so you want to fill it out for, if there's a chance in hell that you're going to get a good guy, but at the same time, you're going to end up probably deleting half of those guys, especially with a smaller school. So, you definitely got to fill it up just for the fact of, having a backup plan if the top guys you're chasing aren't going to come calling your way.
I say you shoot your shot early on. You see if, you put the idea out there, and if they bite on it, then you move them into your top recruits or something.
Yeah, because it doesn't hurt to give them a scholarship right away, I would assume.
No, not at all. I mean, to me, that's probably the base strategy is you scout as many as you can, and then you offer scholarships to as many as you can.
Yeah, because like with the online dynasty, that's all you can really do right off the bat in week 0 is offer them a scholarship. You can't do anything else with them at that time. So you might as well spend the points while you got some there to use.
Yep.
In Game Day Gaming, he pointed out that I don't know if he tested or played with it, but he auto recruiting turned on, and Alabama only signed 5 players, and this is post game update. So it looks like there's something still that is not quite. Obviously, the auto recruiting is more of the handrails or bumpers for people who maybe don't like recruiting or don't have time to do recruiting or just want to play the season mode, basically. And he noticed that. So I thought that was a good find. So apparently, computer, when you do that, at least, is not necessarily the most engaging.
I bet what it was doing was, like Tommy had said, they would you like the computer would add a guy, max out the points before going on to the next guy, and then max out the points before you go to the next guy. And so then that just led to the inability to use points on anybody else. And so since they didn't have any other points, they didn't add anybody either. So
visits fixed an issue where you could not schedule visits for recruits in certain situations. That was very frustrating.
That was so annoying. I'd be right there neck and neck with a team, and I lose just because they schedule a visit.
Fixed an issue where a visit remained scheduled even if the recruit was removed from a board. Well, maybe they just wanted a free trip. That's not
Hey,
that's not
can't
completely
blame 'em.
unrealistic, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Fixed an issue where the allowed number of visits scheduled per week to exceed 4. I didn't notice that in the little dynasty I've done so far. I wish I had, to be honest with you. And then they tuned some visit influence effects.
Yeah, for that fix the number of visits, I didn't know there was supposed to be a limitation. So I mean, yeah, I just tried to schedule as many at the same time as I could, especially if they were complementary. So
yeah,
that makes it a little bit more strategic. So that's probably a good thing in the end, but definitely, something to get used to.
So when I did a dummy one, I knew there was only a limit of 4, so I never tried.
I didn't even know I didn't know there was a limit. So when I did my dummy one, but again, I wasn't going to bring 2 halfbacks in on the same week either. So I really never had I think I spread them out so evenly. I didn't even have a chance to realize I couldn't. And maybe I just didn't know, because maybe I'm wondering why. Maybe I just, as I'm simming through it, I just didn't realize, oh, there's so many guys coming in this week, I can't schedule this. But maybe I didn't realize that was the reason for it to be locked or something.
Super sim. The point I want to bring up here, and this is something I've noticed in previous communications from EA online. Tell me if I'm wrong here. Maybe it's another Mandela effect. I think they're conflating, and I'm not saying solely here, but it's several communications, super sim and simming. The way I understood it from back in the day, now this is a long time ago, so maybe I hit my head enough in the interim, I don't remember. Sim is basically like a Dynasty weekly advance. That's sim. Super sim was the feature they added. I don't remember the year. That was the graphic on the field. That kind of the super sim was especially for Road to Glory feature. That was super sim. I feel like in some of the communications, and I should have brought more examples, they're confusing the two, because there's one instance where they talk about the super sim. I think it might have been the blog they put out talking about what they were working on. Basically, like what we had, I think 2 weeks ago when they put out that preview of this patch, they talk about Super Sim. We don't want the small schools upsetting the big teams in Super Sim. I'm like, well, that's actually simulation. That's not Super Sim. Small detail, but for the guys like us who remember everything before cancellation, it's like you're not using the proper language, guys.
No, I would agree with you. Again, there is a distinct difference. I know in the past they've said that they are 2 totally separate engines. So, they don't go hand in hand. Now maybe that's changed by now. It's been a long time, but at the same time, yeah, they definitely need to make sure that they're clear on how they're communicating that.
Polls. This was a big one online. Like I said, I've only done dummy Dynasty. It wasn't dummy just because it was me using it, but then talking about the polls were a big one, because a lot of people in our Twitter feed and just in general on Twitter posting, the multiple lost teams getting into the playoffs, or the undefeated team that only could get to like number 4 in the rankings, where there was a 3 or 4 loss team at number 1. They increased the loss penalty for schools with more than 1 loss, increased the weighing of conference prestige in the poll calculation, and reduced the variance in college football playoff poll logic versus media coaches. And it says that they will continue to watch this and monitor this. This may be something that gets tweaked again down the line.
So you're telling me I can't have 4 quality losses and still be ranked number 1?
If you're in the SEC, you might. You might be able to. Okay. Anyone else? No, probably not.
Or the Big Ten, since they have 55 schools now.
Yeah, that actually might work out.
Yeah.
Some fixes to the custom conference and custom schedules aspect. I know people noticed. And I've heard there's still issues there, that this isn't completely fixed yet. I've seen people in our Twitter feed who said that on custom conferences, on custom schedules, that the one gentleman had said that like weeks 1 through 9 are the conference games, and all the non-conference now are like week 10 on. So something got busted in his. What changes he had done to me because of conferences or schedule, I don't know, but I know there's people out there saying this is still not correct. Road to Glory, I think the one that stood out to me was the very first one that said added an additional scenario in NIL content. We did not get 24 hours before that got, I don't want to say leaked, but Matt Brown asked, have you played Road to Glory and gotten an NIL opportunity with California Almonds? Turns out that's a real NIL deal that the Almonds signed with EA Sports. I think that's the only brand-sponsored in-game NIL opportunity at the moment. We'll see if that changes. I don't know if that was the one that was added, but I never heard of it till after this patch. There are people who responded in his comments and said that Nissan is also one of the NIL opportunities, which makes sense, being that Nissan is a sponsor in the game with the Heisman Trophy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that response right there, getting Nissans for my entire position group, I think that's a big win there.
Mm-hmm. So I think the cover arms might be a new one based on that. I had not heard of anybody talking about that yet.
Better than a car wash I've been offered. Jeez. Also, like with the phone thing, man, I don't know if I don't think they even mentioned this, but the grades are kind of off too. I've noticed. Like, I'll have my whole bar for studying all the way full, and you got all C's. I'm like,
Yeah, I saw that as well for me. Like one semester, I filled up as much as I could and still ended up getting all C's.
yeah, it
But yet
seems like
my
it's
grade point
random.
average is 3.5 or whatever it is. So
Yeah,
Quit taking those tough classes. Get into Rocks for Jocks and History of Rock 101. That's what they.
clearly, yeah.
I can
hell,
talk from
I
experience. I know
took
that's what at the university they do.
I took those, and I wasn't even an athlete.
I'll leave that joke alone, JB. I'm not going to touch that one. Road to Glory. Now it's interesting here. They reworked the wear and tear UI to show position appropriate ratings impacts. I believe the wear and tear UI overall got improved, especially that middle part. They kind of clarified the ratings decrease. And I went through some of the original screenshots that came out from the game and trailers, and I think it's been reworked like maybe once or twice now. But they only mention here for the Road to Glory aspect. Have you guys had issues with Road to Glory? I've had it. I've only played 15. I'm in like the first week of this year two, or I should say third week of year two. There are times where I'm doing some of the weekly stuff. I don't remember what it was exactly. When I kick out of it, I can't see the menu. Like the backdrop's there, not the menu. So I can't do anything. And one week it actually advanced the week for me and it skipped a game that I actually wanted to play. And I'm not
No,
saying
I
I'll be able
have
to talk
I
about
haven't
that.
I say I haven't seen anything like that. I've seen to where I can back out too quickly and it goes back to the main menu. Like if I hit
Hmm.
circle twice on
Uh-huh.
accident,
I've
it
done that.
skips. Yeah, it skips straight to the main menu, like
Yeah.
to the start menu or whatever. So,
And
uh,
hmm.
whereas if you're at the regular menu, at the Road to Glory menu, it'll say,
Hmm.
"Are you sure you want to close?" You know, so
See, I
it's kind
got
of
that, but then everything behind what was supposed to be there was gone. And then I hit circle and it pops up and says, "You have unused points. Are you sure you want to?" I'm like, "No, I can't do anything. I can't see." Fixed UI issues around text messages. I had one time, and I'm going to mess up the name here because I'm not a big Road to Glory expert, but it's the third panel over when it gives your week summary and has all the bar graphs on it. One time that stayed on the screen over the text messages that popped up. So I had the phone on my screen and I could not read 90% of it. So I just picked the first option because I know that's always a safe option, but I have no clue what it was
oh,
because I
it's not
couldn't read
always
it.
the safe option.
It
Like
was
if
shoot the
it's
Oh,
team
well.
up. You chose shot the teacher. Jeez.
yeah,
Okay, well maybe it wasn't always a safe one, but I just like, well, I'm just gonna pick the first one because I don't know what this says. So there definitely are a
Uh,
lot of UI issues in Road to Glory. I hope
yeah.
this addressed them. Plenty of changes to College Football Ultimate Team presentation. A lot of good stuff in this. New uniform pieces added for a bunch of schools, including Oregon, Baylor, Iowa State. Those are the ones that seem to get the most play online. One thing I want to mention, I don't know if you guys would notice this. I'm into this stuff probably more than you guys, or probably more than most of our listeners for that example. They may have borrowed things from Madden, which I know blasphemy sounds weird. I really don't like when you do the uniform select. They copied the Madden style of current home option or current home option two, or what is it? Custom, or there's another word I'm looking for in that. I forget what it is, but it's very much the Madden style and not what they used like in NCAA football 14, where like if the uniform had a name, the name showed up, at least a
Mm.
part of the elements. So like if you want to go pick like the Baylor anthracite uniforms that they put out, which are really cool, you have to scroll and find, I believe it's like current home option two. Not a big deal, but to me, it
yeah.
would make sense
But
if they
no,
used the proper name.
agreed. It's a simple thing. I mean, the
Mhm.
schools can tell you what they call them, or
Mhm.
just call it the simple all black, all red. You know,
Right.
if they have a nickname called anthracite, then call it that. But otherwise, just give it a simple description, you
I
know.
would think down the line that would make issues. Now we don't. Maybe the file name has that in there, so maybe it's not an issue for EA. But I would think down the line when they go through, you at least want to know the year. It would make it easier. That way, if you have to go in and remove
Yeah.
things or pull things, you're like, okay, this uniform's 5 years old. They haven't worn it. We can probably remove it from the game instead of now being like, okay, home option, no, current home option two. Was that from 2017 or is that the 2024 version? It just seems like they might be giving themselves more work than they really need to. And I hate to. I'm not trying to throw anything in their face, but when we hear a lot about the word on their own side about being sickos, having the detail name, the uniform name matters. Because if I'm on the street talking to somebody and they happen to say, "Hey, did you watch that Baylor game?" Yeah. Oh yeah, did you see those cool anthracite uniforms? I know that's somebody who's into the game, who
No,
into
I
football.
know.
They follow the details. If they
No, I
when they
saw the custom home 2 uniforms.
yeah, 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 it's a small thing, but they very much copied the Madden, which I don't care for the way Madden does it because I
Now, because
just
the
don't like
names were
it.
in 14, weren't they? Because like
I
Nebraska,
thought some uniform pieces had the proper names on it.
yeah,
Yeah,
Nebraska
for sure
had
they
some
did.
of the some that got added like mid
Mhm.
mid 14. I can't remember. What was like it was like those kind of off black. You know what I mean? That with the red.
I would have to go back and find. I'm pretty sure that they had some of the names of the pieces, which makes it easier for everybody. I think, and it looks better on EA's side as well. Adjust the uniform pieces for the 20. Oh, go ahead, Tommy.
I will say, to give EA a little bit of credit here, it is good to see that they're not DLC. I mean, we didn't really ever have the full answer there, but now we kind of have a better answer there, so that's good. Now that doesn't prevent them from doing it either in future updates or starting next year or whatever. But
thanks for giving the idea, Tommy. Good job.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they thought of that a long time ago. But yeah, long story short, I at least will give them credit here that these updates, especially before the season, are a nice addition.
They just uniform pieces for the 24 season. I didn't look into this to see what that meant exactly. Improvements some of the team's uniform pieces for authenticity. Updates to the following stadiums. Texas State, that one we knew about. They added in the second deck. Tommy had said your backdrop. That's why I picked Texas State for our online Dynasty, so I could say that my stadium got a mid-Dynasty stadium expansion. Your guys' didn't. So you missed out on that one.
Yeah, but when you lose to Arkansas State later this year, it ain't going to matter.
That's probably
I don't know if you guys saw, but it's not here in the notes, but the FIU stadium is called Pitbull Stadium, Pitbull Stadium in the audio. They don't have
305.
They don't have the graphics for it yet, but they have the audio for it.
What is the tech when you start the game there? What's it say on the lower middle? Does it say Pitbull Stadium or still say FIU Stadium?
I think it still says FIU, but like Reese Davis is saying Pitbull Stadium.
I wondered. I meant to go check that, but I didn't get to that.
They need to have him do a concert for all the halftime shows there.
Don't give him any ideas.
I want that in the game. I'll be FIU all day.
Kansas's new stadium, which will not be done until next year, is in the game. So if you want to get it, see what their new stadium looks like. I remember seeing mock-ups before, but it's different when you actually get to see like as close as we're going to get. I don't quite understand the aesthetic with all the yellow poles up here. That's supposed to represent like you're in a bird cage with the JBHuskers. Is that to confuse field goal kickers? So maybe they don't know what
it's definitely distracting.
They look like goalposts. Yeah.
I'm not really. It's unique. I'll give them that.
It's something.
But I have not played a game there yet. Maybe it'll make sense if I play a game there. But based on the screenshots, this is again from Jake Clyde, who did a great job yesterday with this thread. It's cool. I don't know what they were going for exactly, but
maybe eventually they'll put a gigantic tarp over, and
in Nebraska, not 100% sure what they did here, but I looked a little closer at the stadium, and I'll be honest, it's the local team, but I can't say I really looked at the stadium too close because I've been trying to look at every stadium in the game, and it isn't like my feedback's going anywhere on the details, so why bother? But I did notice looking a little bit closer at the stadium. Now, what I have here is a real life photo. Going in game, I went and looked at Nebraska Stadium a little bit closer, following this update to see if I could figure out what that meant for Nebraska. I can tell you what it didn't include, and also going back now, I can figure out what assets EA used to make this stadium. The assets they used for Nebraska came prior to the 21 season, so this is 3 years old. One of the reasons I can tell is because of the consecutive sellout number is at 375. In real life, they're at 396 and will hit 400 in the fourth game of the year. 375 translates back to the end of the 20 season, start of the 21 season. Went through Reddit earlier tonight before we recorded the show. They were talking about in old threads that the field, they thought this looks weird. Why is it looks like the old style with the different varying shades of gray, shades of green on the field. The field art also has been updated since, but EA used the assets apparently that Nebraska sent in from prior to the 21 season and never went back and updated it. So it's one of those that we think
this is post-patch that we're seeing right now, right?
Yeah, and it was like this before the patch as well. I should clarify. I'm trying to figure out what they address with Nebraska Stadium, and to be honest, I still don't know.
Or maybe they're putting in the because they're doing something to South Stadium eventually, or did they axe that now?
I think that's on hold.
Yeah.
What is interesting that in the game, just to show you, like, and we've talked about this, some of the schools are not great ambassadors in terms of sending in details to EA. It isn't like every school jumps on it. This is where you still need community input. You still need fan input, which right now, EA, no offense, they're not asking for that.
The entrance tunnel's in the middle now.
Right? Okay, they have them coming out of this tunnel in the game, which is incorrect. They started last year coming out over here.
Yeah.
Which is fine. That's only a year out of date. I can understand that being wrong. Even as a fan, I don't like it. I get it. What's interesting is that starting this year, Nebraska will be on the west sideline. That's in the game. That has not happened in real life yet. They do have that correct. So they did catch that detail, whether it be from Nebraska or on their own, to fix. there are some, and that was in also pre-patch. I still don't know post-patch what got added. However, it's interesting to note that, and the facades on the stadium in real life being updated this year. So I can understand that being outdated. But it's worth noting that we talked about in the past, schools are not the best ambassadors, best representatives for the product. They are not good about sending in details. And a big school like Nebraska, you think would be all over something like this. No offense, horrible. 3 years out of date. And I'm going to blame them for it, but EA has slight responsibility. There's a couple of jabronis I know of who would be glad to send them free screenshots of updated stadium, and that wasn't good enough.
Yeah, and they, that the old games used to include all the buildings behind the stadium too, and now the new one doesn't.
One thing that's not listed here is I saw comparisons of Oregon State before and after, and it was a major renovation to one of their sideline the stands. So again, go look at your favorite team, see if something changed after the patch. You may be pleasantly surprised, but yeah, I'm curious why that one's not listed here. Obviously, oversight on their part, but yeah, it's not a small change either.
No, and there were a lot of fans online who were upset that it wasn't right from the get-go. So you thought they would have mentioned it to get the credit. So it's one of those, their patch notes don't always include everything, as we mentioned when we let off the show. So you can't always go fully by this. There might be more than what they listed, and some of the stuff may not have already been updated before the patch, to be honest. This is one that I saw a lot online on social media. They fixed an issue where the incorrect mascot would appear during different situations. I've never seen it firsthand, but I've seen it plenty of times online. And also they restored the opening chants for Penn State, Florida State, and Tennessee on Xbox. You would not hear the Tomahawk Chop or Rocky Top, for example, which pretty bad bug, especially, just for a general college football fan, because those songs are so well known by everybody. Road to College Football Playoff. I've played a couple games in this, and I'm awful online, but they reformatted the tiers from 3 tiers to 5 tiers. So when you do your team select, I think it's supposed to maybe so some good teams aren't buried in a lower tier. But I did play a game yesterday online in this and played somebody who was I wanted to go against somebody in tier 5, and they had Auburn. Now, I know Auburn's not great in real life, but I would not consider them a tier 5 team.
So I guess I haven't played the Road to College Football Playoff. So is it one person selects a tier and you both have to match the tier, I guess? Or
no, what is you can go in and pick. I've done it twice. I'm going off memory here. Like I can go in and pick. You have a filter on team select. So you can pick any team, or you can pick by the tier. The tier 1, I couldn't tell you who's in exactly, but that's probably your Ohio States, your Georgias, for example. Nebraska is a tier 4, if that tells you anything. Then I can pick. Then from there, I could pick who I want to play against, what tier. I could pick any tier because you get more points. Like if I was a tier 4 or 5 team playing a tier 1 and win, yeah, right, I would get way more points to level up. But I wanted to try to get a competitive good game or get an online win. So I said, I want to play a tier 5 team, which could be a really good guy on the sticks. But all of a sudden, then it was my tier 4 against, and I choose the filter. I want to play a tier 5, and it popped up. He was Auburn. And like, I don't know that I would consider Auburn a tier 5 team. I thought that would be more your bottom
probably
of the
3 or at worst a 4.
Yeah, so maybe I did something wrong there, but the mode works differently than I understood it pre-release. Pre-release, I thought it was something where it put the user into tiers based on the results. So I don't know how I got so confused to how it actually worked, because in the first week of launch, I played it. I'm like, this is not what I thought it was. So that's all of the patch notes. We went through 110 bullet points in about no time. Tommy just sent this over, a good find from CFB Kings. This was the Oregon State Stadium renovations. So pretty significant.
Yeah.
You can see there's now 4 decks, really, the overhang, the same principle there. Like you said, I assume that's realistic and not just an up EA version. There was also some criticism about Hawaii, that we've kind of read some things that it sounds like to start the year, at least in the game, they have a generic stadium. And there was some communication several weeks ago that, Hawaii saying we're working with EA, we want to get in the game. That was not part of this update. I feel like a lot of the stuff in this update was stuff they kind of had on the radar. I'm not saying that they didn't listen to the community at launch. I think some of that stuff they very much did, but I feel like most of the stuff was already underway when the game launched.
I completely agree. I think this was all stuff they had identified before launch and weren't able to fix it before, the day one, but at least, they were already working on most of it. For example, Texas State, people called them out, a month and a half ago or whatever it's been. And so, they've I'm sure they didn't work on it every day since the month and a half ago, but at the same time, I'm sure they had it fixed before day one. They just weren't ready to include it in the patch yet.
Right. All right.
That's one thing to kind of call out here. People probably are aware of this, but when they design patches for consoles, Sony and Microsoft have to sign off on them. It's not like they can just release them out into the wild without any worry, because Sony and Microsoft are worried about you bricking their console. So they're going to do, just some basic testing and kind of sign off on it before it goes out. So it's not like it's a fix goes out tomorrow. It's EA develops it, Sony tests it for 3, 7, 10 days, whatever it is, I don't know. And then that's when it gets approved to be patched.
And EA does their own in-house testing as well. So I mean, it goes to like 3 levels, like you say. So anytime you get a really quick fix, it had to be something really urgent, like really like they're fixing a really game-breaking bug if it's out in a matter of days. Right now, the most important thing, we've asked the community before the show, we want to get an early temperature check, and I like doing these a lot. We want to know their thoughts on the game update. Since it was so significant, what do they think? What have they noticed, at least in their first day and a half, couple days of playing? We did mention the open shoot angles, you can spin abilities, dynasty bugs. Those were kind of the bigger issues, got rectified in this update. Let's go through the community here. Coach Gunn said it made the game worse than before the patch. So ringing endorsement right out of the gate there. But Coach Gunn's a loyal fan. So I did ask him, like, what do you mean specifically? And not necessarily to get in an argument. I just want to know, like, if somebody thinks they made the game worse, I want to know why. I mean, honestly, he had mentioned, he goes, long list, a few. Defensive line and field goal block team will now perform the same animation at the same time in sync. I do notice there's some weird stuff that they got to rectify.
Pretty annoying. Yeah.
And he's been banging the injury drum. Injuries are more broken now than before. I know he's talked about there's not a lot of injury for having a wear and tear system. There's not a lot of injuries, and I think we all kind of thought there'd be more, maybe 3-game injuries or several game injuries, and we're not really getting that. Cannot change freshman player positions. Did the server side fix address that, or am I thinking of a different freshman player issue?
No, it's supposed to have fixed that. He may have just not tested it after the server side fix tonight.
Player movement is less natural post update. I don't know if I've noticed that exactly, but if that's how he feels, I'm not going to argue with the guy. Matty Light says commentary needs to be addressed in a future update. And again, I want to know the details. One, I feel like Davis, Palmer, Pollock have more excitement or more to talk about than Fowler, Herbstreit, which is kind of like we talked about on the last show. Fowler doesn't seem to have as much energy as he claimed to in his video updates about recording sessions. Also, the only time you get studio updates is when Reese is calling the game. You never hear Fowler say anything about throwing it back to the studio unless it's a halftime update. NCAA 14 had actual studio updates like you'd see on a real-life broadcast. He feels the halftime show is super short and needs to include scores from around the country. It's worse than the Madden halftime show, which is saying something. And he also appreciates the podcast. So he did say, he goes, maybe I'm being nitpicky. I don't think he is, because no matter, everybody plays the game and hears the commentary. It doesn't matter if you're, if you're going through trying to play arcade or competitive or strategy or fun, you got to put up with the commentary. He would like to know if the rumor is true that Fowler re-recorded lines to give more energy and if that will be added to a future title update. I've seen that. I don't know the source on that, and I can't say I've gone digging through Fowler's social media to verify.
I've not looked through Fowler's social media, but I've not seen it posted anywhere else or with any source attributed to it. So, I think they probably will, but when that happens or anything like that, that's a question. I did see some people suggesting that Fowler seemed better after the title update, but I didn't notice it especially. So, I mean, if so, it's only a few lines or something like that. It's definitely not every line.
I guess I think I've used the other commentary team more, and I did not use Kirk or Chris since the update, so maybe I will have to later. Bill Kahn responded in that same thread. I've also heard them comment when I call timeout late and I have to save clock that I'm doing it because I'm trying to get everyone on the same page or something along those lines. I've noticed that too. There's some lines that should not be popping up. I can't think of the example that I have, but I know exactly what he's talking about. There's some that they're giving the wrong rationale.
Yeah, as well. I've heard Kirk talk about that basically the games being a blowout in the second quarter rather, when there's still plenty of time to come back.
And there's also I had the halftime with Kevin Connors. Will say it's like a really I can't remember. He said it's a really close game, and it wasn't. I was up by like 3 scores, and we got a nail biter here, and I'm like, no, we really don't. It's not that close a score.
He's figured you're gonna blow it.
He's probably right. Game Day Gaming. I've still noticed some pursuit angle issues personally. Overall, much needed changes with the recruiting schedule, visit glitch, missed tackles from behind, improved ranking logic, and halfback sim stats. That was a big one too. That I don't know that it got necessarily mentioned in the patch, at least in great detail, but people have said that that's way better. But like as you mentioned with the halfback stats, easy breezy 23. The score ticker for other games in Dynasty mode still doesn't appear when you super sim in game to watch it without playing the game. Team builder teams not seen in the top 25 rankings. They appear as blank. And he does show an example of that there. I wasn't aware of that one. I've heard of these other issues. That's one I had not heard of before. I know team builder end zone logos in conference championships and bowl games. I kind of understand why that might be the case, but you would think with that website they would have found a way to make that work.
Yeah, they should have just a simple generic
Just take the name and
text. Yeah, just
You
a
pick the
text with the
font,
colors. Exactly. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe not even allow you to pick the font, but ideally you'd be able to. But
right.
at a bare minimum, just put plain text, white text with your colors surrounding it, or something like that. You know.
Yep. Left field Lou says if you pick a weak team and play against a way better college team, you will automatically lose. Also, the ball gets intercepted way more often now. I don't know if I like the interception one is interesting. I think I'm the only one who's saying this. I still feel like the accuracy on the deep ball is just way too much. And I think it's my personal theory is I call it point to point football. I just feel like the deep ball is always way too deep. I feel like I can tell when a quarterback doesn't have the power to get it there, but if they have that power, it seems like they're always accurate, even if they don't have the best accuracy. And maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's my own personal thought. I know what he's saying though, and the ball getting intercepted way more often now. I don't know if I played enough to have an opinion on that one, to be honest with you. Have you guys?
Not post patch, I haven't played enough. And plus, I'm playing with modified sliders, which they were modified to not have as many interceptions. So the defense drops a lot more of those passes. I will say with the sliders, especially, but even after the patch, it seems like there are more ducks being thrown. So, I mean, again, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's just, the one or two games I've played. So it could be me being wrong. But anyway, long story short, yeah, still need to do a little bit more testing there to say that it's actually been impacted one way or the other.
We also on our Twitter, so make sure you're following us at Gaming Tailgate, put up a look at some of those new uniforms, and we asked what alternates, past or present, do you hope to see added to the game? Ant Davis 27 said, "Give me these three, some of the great LSU throwbacks." I kind of forgot these alternates that they had wore until he posted the picture. Then it came flooding back to me. Tommy, I don't know who this is. Arkansas State's state helmet. Looking forward to the red uniforms in the future as well. I threw up a couple of Nebraska alternates that were 97 and 87, or excuse me, 83 throwbacks. Tyler Diener, some Ohio State uniforms. Call me Sean.
I saw somebody else post about those Ohio State. They're ones they only wear in the playoffs.
Right.
So, I mean, again, that's kind of a nice touch. I can see why they'd be excluded from the game, but they should be added as entitle them playoff red, playoff white, or whatever.
Right. Kind of surprised they aren't in. Call Me Sean says he's not a fan of either Baylor or Iowa State, but he likes those uniforms, and kudos to EA for adding them. I agree. And Perry Kilgore says Jacksonville State just unveiled some new uniforms this week. I don't think I've seen those. I'm optimistic they'll be in, but that is worth noting. I did not know that.
I did not know that. Yeah, that's a good point though, is that there's going to be a lot of schools between now and the start of kickoff that announce new uniforms or unveil them week 1 or something like that. So I'm sure EA is prepared to do most, if not all of those. The Arkansas State ones have already been mentioned that they're going to be added in a future update. If I had to guess, probably added in the title update 3 at the end of this month. But yeah, it seems like they're going to continue to add more and more content throughout the rest of the patches.
Yeah, there's some the Jacksonville State ones are nice. If you go to @JaxStateFB, they've got an all black and then a white helmet with a black stripe on it that looks really nice. And then they've got all reds too that look pretty cool. There you go.
Here's a look at those uniforms. Now, to be fair, EA doesn't put everything in their patch notes. Has anybody gone in to check to see if they're in yet? I'm guessing they're probably not, but it is worth mentioning. Has anybody actually gone to look yet?
The Arkansas State ones are not in there, so I can at least confirm that.
Okay.
Considering these were just announced 4 days ago, I highly doubt they are. But you never know if they know ahead of time, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Baylor hadn't announced theirs until yesterday or 2 days ago, the day before the patch. So, again, obviously EA was working closely with Baylor to get those into the patch.
Yeah.
All right, 2 things I want to bring up for you guys to weigh in on and think about, and for the community to weigh in and think about as well. One, notice playing a little bit of Ultimate Team the other day. When it gives you the conditions, it talks about obviously the difficulty level, the team you're going against overall. But right in the middle, it says arcade. And this stood out to me for 2 reasons. One, right at launch, I remember somebody giving EA credit and saying, thank you for not having this game like Madden, where it has arcade and competitive play styles. I think they felt that the game was just doing the basic, go through sliders and difficulty. But then I saw this. My theory, my working theory, I can't say I have anything to really base it on. My theory is that the standard gameplay, like when you're in Dynasty or playing out, Road to Glory, etc., still has arcade and competitive, but the game has been set to arcade and users cannot change it. Yes, you can go in at your sliders to make it more realistic, but given how the game plays, especially defensively with all the big plays offensively, my theory is that the game is set to arcade. We just don't know that. We just can't change that. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd be curious if here in Ultimate Team, if you see something other than arcade, like maybe only for certain of the challenges they set it to arcade. I'd be curious. I mean, again, I've played a little bit of the challenges, but I haven't played all of them. And definitely now that you mentioned that, I'll be sure to look for it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a working theory.
Go all the way down to like some of there's not this one, but back they've added a bunch of challenges. I wonder if there's any older, any of the new ones have where it's not arcade.
There's simulation.
Yeah. So it may just be an Ultimate Team thing that for certain challenges they want you to score 100 points kind of thing, so they put it on arcade or something.
Yeah, maybe they brought that over from Madden, but the base gameplay is not like that.
That's my theory. I'm not married to it, but I do think it's worth noting. I'd love to know what the community thinks about that. I don't know if I said I'm not married to that theory, but after I saw it in Ultimate Team, I thought, I wonder if that's in the game. We just don't know it. And then a small presentation detail. It doesn't really amount to anything, but I do think it was interesting here. Actually, several here. One, there's some teams, and it's Nebraska, namely, where I've seen this. Like they've made up rivalry names. Yet this is called the Freedom Trophy, and they talk about this is the battle for freedom. And then when you set it to, say, for example, and it's not called the Battle for Heroes, or excuse me, the Battle for Freedom. That's not what it's called. I've never heard it called that. Could be wrong. I've never seen it called that. Iowa, Nebraska play in the Heroes game. Battle of the Heroes. I've never heard it called that. So I don't know if it's some just generic script and they have to pop in words. I don't know. I don't know if anybody else has seen that for their favorite schools. I would love to know.
Is every single rivalry game saying Battle of?
I didn't think so. Another small presentation thing I noticed. A couple here, actually. Texas State, the only one I've seen like this is that left versus right, the Adidas logo is different colors. It doesn't mean anything. I just thought that was interesting. It is more noticeable, in my opinion, that the Adidas logo is the old style. And I did a Google search last night. I just typed in Adidas visor. And the Adidas visors have the new logo where it doesn't have the text underneath, and the 3 stripes are much bigger. Not a big thing, but it's interesting when that's one of their big branded partners that they don't have the proper logo.
I'm curious. Honestly, I see a mix of where you can go out and buy the visors from football equipment distributors or whatever. And it looks like you can buy both as of today. So I'm not sure if Adidas has finally settled on one or not, but again, both are available today. So it's not completely outdated, but at the same time, definitely the EA needs to work with Adidas to make sure they get the right one in there.
Because that logo kind of just changed before last year. And it is worth noting that some schools still don't have updated uniforms. I don't know if they're using old uniforms and just changing the nameplates. But if you watch like smaller schools generally, they still have the Adidas logo with the 3 stripe and the text underneath. Whereas you look at the bigger schools like an A&M or Nebraska, their uniforms have just the 3 stripes, bigger logo, no text underneath. So you're right. Maybe it's still very much in use, but I thought it was interesting that you can buy new visors that have just the 3 stripe. So when I see it in the menus game, for example, I think that looks a little outdated. And JB, for your point, looking here, some of those rivalry games, looks like they play for something. They do list it as battle for the, example, the Missouri-Nebraska battle for the victory bell, even though they don't have that in the game. The bell is not shown on the menu screen. So maybe that's just some generic format they used.
I'd be curious checking Cincinnati, Louisville, the keg of nails, what they call that. If it's just the battle for the keg of nails or
battle for the keg.
Yeah.
I believe the keg of nails is in the game because they showed that in one of their behind the scenes blogs. But obviously it does not show here.
Yeah, it doesn't show the logo, but then as well, there's no nickname for the game as far as I'm aware. So again, they just call it battle for the keg of nails. So,
but it's interesting, like Nebraska, Iowa. I know we're really in the weeds here, but that's known as the Heroes game. So that seems to be, that should be, I can't think that they would have made a generic battle for the insert thing here, that you thought it would have been a full text field that they can edit. That would have made way more sense. Because I mean, like Nebraska, they're making up names of games that's not, nobody's ever called it those. Like I mentioned, nobody calls them that.
The Red River Rivalry, is that battle for the Red River.
Yeah, it's like we're not the teams aren't trading heroes back and forth, whoever wins. So
they're freeing hostage situation.
it is if it's a one-sided rivalry. Jeez.
Red River rivalry.
Okay, so yeah, clearly they can customize what's there. So I think it's just if there's not a true nickname, although like you said, the Heroes Bowl, that
Heroes
should
game.
be Heroes Game. Excuse me, sorry.
It's all right. It's all right. Don't disrespect it.
But yeah, for those, I mean, just call them what the actual nickname is. But I'm sure for the ones that they don't have a nickname for it, then they just say Battle for the Trophy.
And like Nebraska, Wisconsin, and they play for the Freedom Trophy, which is incredibly lame. But they call it the Battle for Freedom. The loser has to stay under communism. They don't say that out in public much, but it's true.
Northwestern Illinois,
Syracuse, West Virginia.
Let me show you UConn here first. I had this on my brain. Right, remember those two? I mean, this was not in the nose to talk about rivalry games, but now that we're here, I'm actually having a lot of fun with this.
It's thrilling content.
People who stick with us this long, they deserve it. UConn UMass, they call it just the UConn UMass rivalry. What's interesting, this was one that Bob Diaco, when he was the coach at UConn, tried to make a rivalry, and UCF, when Scott Frost was the coach there, they won the game, won this trophy. They left the trophy on the sideline. Like they wanted no part of this.
It's important, yeah.
But it's in the game. I don't think the trophy is. Last I knew, I don't think anybody knew where the trophy was at. But he tried to call it the civil conflict, and the FL and the CT capitalized for the state abbreviations. But that is in the game correctly.
Of course it is. It's UCF.
Syracuse, West Virginia.
And I'm really surprised they don't have a filter for rivalries like they used to before. Like you have your team selected, then the other side would randomize a rival. Yeah, make this way easier for content next year. You said who? I'm sorry, Syracuse?
Syracuse.
Well, they can even do 2 lines of text if they have enough here.
I was gonna say, yeah, that I was curious about that one because that one, again, there's no nickname, but they have that trophy apparently. So
that must be the default that they didn't know better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess the question is, does it have to have a nickname? I mean,
it'd be easier if some of those were blank. If you had just the rivalry logo,
yeah, exactly,
trophy logo, it would get the point across.
Exactly. I agree.
JB, what was the one you brought up?
There's Northwestern and Illinois.
I mean, you can see it. The graphics on the screen kind of covered up a battle for the land of Lincoln.
So they're playing for land.
Yeah.
It's like the old expansion of the West.
Ole Miss and Mississippi State.
Egg Bowl.
Okay. So
at least it ain't the battle for the Egg Bowl.
Is it?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
This is it. I mean, this is way arguing semantics there. Is it Egg Bowl or the Egg Bowl?
I think it's Egg Bowl, actually.
I'm just wondering. It's one that I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
I just wondered on that.
I mean, the Wikipedia, the official source, calls it Egg Bowl.
Oh, that's right then. Okay.
But
it's a bona fide question.
But traditionally named Battle for the Golden Egg. So
oh, see, then they should. The one time they should have
a battle. Yeah, one time
they
missed opportunity.
Battle in real life, they quit calling it the Civil War. Oregon State.
Yeah,
so apparently
too controversial.
Yeah, everyone who's still alive from back then gets flashbacks, so they had to get rid of it.
PTSD.
So Oregon State rivalry. I almost think it'd be better leaving that blank, especially everyone who knows what it's been called forever.
Yeah. Yep.
I stumbled on there. Hawaii UNLV is the Island Showdown. I don't know if I knew about that one.
I didn't know about that one.
I don't know if I knew about that one. See, we're learning all sorts of stuff tonight. We educate our fans. Do we have fans? War for the oar.
War for the oar.
That's is that what, the trophy they went after? Is they have an oar?
That's what Wikipedia calls it now as well. So
that is a massive downgrade.
Yeah, for sure.
Massive.
For sure. I mean, it was never officially the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, but still, I mean,
it all but was.
Yeah, exactly.
If you say that, everybody knew who that meant.
It's the I can't pronounce it. Okefenokee Oar.
You shouldn't have tried it.
I know. I think that's actually right. Probably.
I think it does sound right, actually. Yeah. Okay, that's a massive downgrade.
What about Hawaii San Jose State? I'm hoping it's the battle for letters. I'm hoping it's battle for Dick.
It's the battle for the Dick Tomey Legacy Trophy.
Wow, they almost had to put a third line in there.
It's a big rivalry name.
Yeah.
Florida State and Hawaii battle for the golden screwdriver.
Who?
Florida State or Fresno State and
I
Hawaii.
was
I would
gonna
say
say
I was really
that's
confused
a
when you said Florida
big-
State. That's a
Yeah.
Actually, they quit. They didn't do it last year. Last time they played was 22. But oh yeah, let's see. I wonder if they included it then. If they didn't
golden
play for it.
screwdriver is in the
Yeah.
game. Well, at least the text is in the game, I should say.
Yeah, I was gonna say because like some of these, like say Georgia Tech Vanderbilt is the gold cowbell. They haven't played since 2016, but they've played 38 times. I wonder how far back some of those go.
I'd
What
be
was that called
curious
again,
if-
JB? I'm sorry, I missed what you said.
Yeah, go ahead.
It was the gold cowbell.
Well, here it's just a rivalry. We don't talk about cowbells.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tommy.
Did they have? I think they have Memphis as a rival for Arkansas State, but I haven't paid attention. Do they have a rivalry name there? Same for Texas State.
The Paint Bucket Bowl is listed.
Oh wow,
Hey.
that has not been called that since like the 60s or 70s. The tradition was that the losing team had to allow the winning team to paint a section of their campus the other team's colors. So, but apparently people got upset or something in like the 70s or 80s or something like that. So,
What was the other rivalry you wanted me to check on with Arkansas State?
they called Texas State a rival in a game I played. I didn't pay attention to what the we don't have really a rivalry other than we're just the two. Okay, yeah, we're just the two left out because everybody else is naturally paired up with like UL Lafayette and UL Monroe and so on.
Oh, there's gonna be a rivalry in the online dynasty.
Now,
Mhm.
It's called rivalry in real life or in the
No,
game mentioned in
well,
commentary?
it's Sunbelt fans want to say, let's have a rivalry week, and they say, well, I guess we'll have Arkansas State and Texas State play each other, that kind of thing.
Do Missouri and Oklahoma. They play for the Tiger Sooner peace pipe.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
The
Kansas,
border war.
Missouri, while you have it there, yeah,
Yep.
border war. That's kind of a better name for it, but actually that is the correct nickname, but they have a different trophy name. So
What's the trophy for that one?
Indian War Drum. I'm sure they probably didn't want to really reference that.
The arch rivalry. I thought that had a logo, but maybe I'm wrong on that.
The arch rivalry does have a logo. It's at least as of the most recent, it's a State Farm arch rivalry. So
That's what I thought. Maybe they
Apple-
don't.
yeah,
Appalachian State and Georgia Southern.
what is it? Good old fashioned hate or something like that.
Deeper than
Or-
hate.
Deeper
You
than
said
hate.
who in Georgia Southern? I'm sorry.
Appalachian.
Deeper than hate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Georgia Tech is the old fashioned hate or clean old fashioned hate.
Let's see if it's in the game. Clean old fashioned hate is in the game.
Mhm.
Plain old fashioned hate.
And Georgia Southern, Georgia State is modern day hate.
Eh,
And that is in the game as well.
So, I mean, clearly they have some,
Yes, they've done their
a
work.
lot of these. Well, they went up to the same Wikipedia article that I have up on my
Same here. That's where I was at.
That's funny.
But yeah, clearly they at least highlighted a lot of the ones that, again, I'm very surprised that they had the Arkansas State one. I'm sure.
I got one more for you.
Actually, no, it is in the Wikipedia article. So again, that hasn't been truly celebrated in a long time. But
We'll close on this one if they've got it. LSU,
yeah, go for it.
LSU and Tulane.
Battle for the rag. They do have it in the game. It's the name. I don't know if the trophy is. I'm assuming there's a trophy with that.
I'm not going to speculate.
Oh,
Let's see.
I'm thinking they only have like 10 or 15 trophies or something like that.
The
I think
the
it's a
actual
ton.
trophy is called Tiger Rag. I don't have a picture of it though. Looks like it's a
The
flag.
winner is awarded a satin trophy flag known as the Tiger Rag
Yeah.
at LSU and the victory flag at Tulane.
does Florida LSU have a rivalry name according to Wikipedia, which I know is the most accurate source known to man?
No, they don't have a rivalry name.
Yeah, it just says Florida-LSU.
I assume, but I just wondered.
Yeah, the flag is pretty interesting. It's definitely old for the rag.
I think I've seen that before. Now you talk about it, it does ring a bell. Magnolia Bowl is in the game. Logo and
Mm-hmm. Is that it just has Ole Miss LSU? I couldn't read it very well from here.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was like Chick-fil-A from here. I couldn't tell.
Kind of looks like it.
I wonder if that's why the State Farm one for Illinois, Missouri wasn't on there. That
Yeah,
arch.
but at the same time, they have a partnership with State, or no, they don't have a partnership with State Farm. They have one with
Allstate.
Allstate,
Yeah,
Discover, Nissan, and now California Almonds.
That's probably the reason why. Then,
You thought they could have photoshopped that out, but I suppose then they'd get sued for using that image and not proper.
Michigan State. While we're here,
well, you know that's in the game, Tommy. Jeez.
Yeah, but what is it going to be titled? Battle for
Paul Bunyan Trophy.
Yeah. See, I mean, I don't know. I'd rather just call it Paul Bunyan Trophy.
What
Don't
about
call it battle for
right?
Or Florida Atlantic and FIU?
The Shula Bowl.
Yep. The winner gets the Don Shula Award.
Battle for the Don Shula Award.
That didn't even start until 2002.
Well, I mean, FIU didn't start as a football program until
around that.
Yeah, around that.
Yeah. Should we check and see Pitbull Stadium to end the show?
It's a 305.
Yeah, it was in 2017 to 2022. It was Ricardo Silva, and then 22 to 24 was FIU.
So the stadium name is wrong.
Correct.
Double wrong.
Wrong.
Okay.
2 years outdated wrong.
Did they add any new uniforms with FIU? Because in real life, they had a bunch of uniforms, and last year they had a different field art for every. I see, like that one, they have like the name for the Biscayne Blue. But maybe some of them do have proper names. All right, here we go. Let's check out the double outdated FIU Stadium or Pitbull Stadium.
Yep.
Welcome everyone to Pitbull Stadium, not far from Miami and the home of the FIU Panthers. And today, this fan base eager to show everyone what the Panthers' home field advantage is all about. There's nothing quite like a great rivalry matchup in college football. The bitterness, the intensity, the lifetime of memories that will come as a result of what we're about to see in this one. As we'll see a squad from the AAC, the Florida Atlantic Owls, taking on a team from Conference USA, the Florida International Panther.
We'll stop there before YouTube hits us with a copyright strike for playing Welcome to the Jungle.
I was pretty impressed with the team builder team that he created, because he has a helmet that basically has like a old style, like almost looks like the Constitution style writing on the entire helmet. Like I didn't know you could do all that. I thought it was just kind of show a logo, but he's got full size, like full wraps on the helmet.
Oh wow!
So like that. Yeah, the Mayflower and the Treaty of Paris, they both look like that in game. I mean, it's actually pretty impressive, I thought.
I've been really impressed with some of the stuff I've seen online from team builder stuff. Like the guys, I saw a guy tell me made all of like the big Sky Conference. I've seen a lot of the HBCUs, and like all it does is make me wish we could have subbed those in for the FCS. Like it's cool they gave the YouTubers the FCS schools. I'd rather play at least a real school, even if it's not real players.
Yeah, it'd be neat if you could add in like 15 or so, just create a team builder teams with basic rosters or something like that, So, but yeah, to me the impressive one is that it's called the Treaty of Paris, but it it has there, yeah.
I've played with Team Builder a little bit a couple days ago because at launch it didn't work for me, which is very frustrating. A lot of people had the same issue, but I went back a couple days ago, and for the most part, it looks like now it's working. So anybody who got frustrated at launch should go try again.
Yeah, I tinkered with it just for a little bit, but I haven't gotten very far with it. But I mean, kind of seeing what some of the stuff that you can do, definitely. Like I thought it was just going to be, helmet logos on the side, kind of like those. But definitely it seems like you can do a lot more than just that.
Yeah, those are pretty neat. I like that Mayflower one too.
Yep.
Yeah, it's user NCAA star 96. Got to give him credit. With that, we will wrap up this edition of the Gaming Tailgate Podcast. Went a little long, a lot to cover, and that rivalry stuff really took off at the end there. I didn't know what we were getting into.
Just a few tangents to go off on.
That's right. Nobody's going to get bored at work this week. For Tommy and JB, I'm CDJ. Everyone, thank you for watching and listening to this edition of the Gaming Tailgate Podcast.